Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our special program today about spring bloomers. Today's going to be a pretty fun and special day in that, whoops, I'm doing the wrong thing. I have some beautiful pictures for you. And not only that, I have the photographer who took all the beautiful pictures with us this morning. I would like to invite welcome my friend here, Alice Mary Herndon. Every photo on this presentation today she took, and she's amazing at it. And we're going to cover something kind of fun today. We're going to talk about spring bloomers, but we're going to talk about those wild things out there, those wild spring bloomers. Florida's often overlooked wildflowers, some of which you may even call a weed. And we're going to talk about, just the great job they do for the environment and for us. So spring bloomers. This is me. I'm Lilly Browning. I work for Hernando County Utilities in the Water Conservation Department. Here is my email at the bottom, LillyB at hernandocounty.us. That's 2 L's in the middle of Lilly. If you like this program, which I think a lot of you are going to really enjoy it, especially visually, and you would like a PDF of this sent to you, it is best that you email me and ask for that, because this chat kind of might disappear after a little bit. So, and of course, my email stays with me. So, as I said, every photo that's going to be shown today was taken by my friend Alice here, Alice Herndon. Now, she and I last year, when the pandemic started, we started a pretty interesting project. She at the time freelanced for the Hernando Sun newspaper. And we came up with an idea between the two of us. I don't remember whose idea all it was, but we took a walk on the wild side pretty much all through March and April, kind of wrapped up in May. And what that meant was that all these spring bloomers out there on the roadsides and in the woods that you just drive by without paying a bit of attention to, we decided to highlight some of those. And the native wildflowers that we have out there. So since we're a year now into this pandemic, we thought it would be fun to revisit some of those. I chose 25 of them. Oh, now wow. Yes, it was hard because they're all incredibly beautiful. So we're going to revisit some of the flowers that we visited in those series. These are different photographs that Alice so graciously allowed me to use for this presentation. And because she's what I call a machine gun photographer, yeah. She wants to make sure she gets that good shot. So everything you hear her taking, it's yeah. So this will give you a little different perspective than some of the ones you may have seen in the newspaper. And these are the principles of Florida-friendly landscaping. This is what I teach. We're going to cover a lot today. Number one, right plant, right place. And we're going to have a different perspective on that today, because today's perspective of right plant, right place is going to be outside of your yard. Some of these plants you can incorporate into your yard, but I'm going to tell you right now, some of them you can't. They're just too wild and free to really make it in a tamed landscape. Some of them you can, some of them are not really available, and even among native nurseries, and that might be because they're just so wild and free, they're hard to propagate. They may have very, very specific conditions that are not going to be replicated in your landscape. Or, it's just, they're just kind of, they do their own thing. some of these, and I'll point them out, you can incorporate them into your yard. But I think it's an interesting take when we think of right plant, right place. We also need to remember outside of our yard, it doesn't have to be a beautifully landscaped yard. Nature does. Nature puts the right plant in the right place. And we need to maybe adjust our attitude to let them be there, not necessarily always consider them weeds, and to understand the importance to our ecology that they represent. All of these flowers bring so many pollinators. And if anyone watched, or you could go back and watch a recording of our program we did on bugs that bite, sting, or taste you, I covered wasps and bees. And I pointed out before we got to the ones that concern us and always sting us and we have unpleasant interactions with, there are, I don't know, hundreds of species of native bees just here in Florida. And wasps, and not all wasps, right, fly around with big stingers to get you. Most of them do not do that at all. So these wildflowers are just imperative to the survival of our native bees and wasps and other pollinators. So we'll start with the first one. This is the Bristle Thistle. And I have the Latin names here. And like I said, you can ask for a PDF of this or write them down. And the reason I'm including Latin names is because common names are just that. And they're common, and people can be calling two different plants by the same common name. Or the same plant might have several common names, like this one, also known as the Horrid Thistle. This is not something you or a bear or want to come across with your foot, with your barefoot or his barefoot. And that's their protection. What these are, well, first let me tell you a story about some of these thistles in general. Well, my native cracker Floridian husband remembers stepping on these as a kid, and it wasn't pleasant for him. But way back, not this Floridian variety, but these are all over the world. There's a legend of different Scottish warring factions where this one tribe was going after the other tribe, but the other tribe was woken up and warned of their presence by the fact that the attacking tribe came across a whole bunch of these and were yelling and moaning and and in pain over this. So that helped the defensive tribe win that war. That's kind of a legend there. This, as Alice very well knows, is a photographer's dream. Yeah, because butterflies will land on this and just stay there and pose for you. I even have some beautiful pictures because the butterflies will just, they don't just flitter off. Like sometimes they're really hard to catch. They're gonna linger on this Bristle Thistle. Just yourself don't get too close to it. And this is the kind that comes out in the spring, correct, Alice? And it is pretty large.
Yeah, right now you're going to start seeing them start blooming. Excuse me, and they get pretty.
Yeah, like at least dessert, at least big. Like dessert plate size flowers. Yeah.
So they'll continue to it's amazing about their height, and they can get up to about, I'm 5'6", and they can reach up that high too as well. But they're just a fabulous plant to be in the wild. If you come across it, and if you're a photographer, if you're just somebody that's enjoying nature, this is like a perfect time to just sit and watch all the butterflies and all the hundreds of species of bees and butterflies and other insects that visit this plant. It's amazing.
It is. It's a great, you know, if you come across them and you have your kids, you might have to hold them up, just but don't get them close to it. They can watch bees and hoverflies and butterflies galore on these. Now, when these start to go down in late spring, another thistle comes up, correct? Called the Nuttall Thistle.
Yeah, yeah.
And that has a lot smaller of a flower head, but still, you know, it attracts so many of these wonderful pollinators. Now, I'm not even sure if these are commercially available, but I really probably would not recommend them for a home landscape.
Yeah,
just because, yeah, because of the horridness of their thorns. This one, you can step outside and see some right now.
Yep.
Wherever you are, you can find these Florida green eyes. Probably not in your lawn because it doesn't like the nice soil that you need to have your lawn look nice. So it's not necessarily a lawn weed, but you'll find it on the roadsides. I have the way my home works is it's a half an acre, and they cleared the first quarter acre that the house is on, and they put a lawn there. And so behind they leave natural, and I have left it mostly pretty natural. And these come up every year. They really only aren't there in the winter, and they've come up wherever they want to come up. And I allow them to do that. So you, in the back of your mind, might be one of those things that you just go right by it and think weed. And again, my saying is a weed is a matter of opinion.
Right.
Unless it's an invasive weed that causes chaos and destruction to an ecosystem, these native quote weeds really are doing wonderful things. The neat thing about these Florida green eyes, first of all, is it is named appropriately. We're going to come across a flower that I am in love with, but its name just always bothers me because it doesn't describe it well. The Florida green eyes are described very well. It's an aster. It's endemic to Florida. The word endemic means it only grows here. So this is our Florida green eyes, only grows in Florida. You're gonna see it. I mean, just go outside, take a walk, and keep your eyes open for it. You'll find these Florida green eyes, and they do attract butterflies and insect pollinators. And as I said, only when it was cold in the winter and we had some frosts and freezes did I not see these, but they're coming back now. And a lot of these, because Alice is so fabulous at capturing the beauty of these flowers and utilizing macro photography. So they, might not look in real life this big, but she wants to show you even the small things. If we take the time to be present in the moment and really look at them, how wonderful they are. These pop up about 6 inches. It's like a little dandelion, really. Pops up like a dandelion. Okay, here's a common one that we are all familiar with and that you can buy seed for, and you can find the flowers pretty easily, and they are landscape friendly. Our friends, the Black-Eye Susan, and these are ones that even people, kind of newish from up north are familiar with these Black-Eye Susans as well. And there's, within all of these plants, slight differences in different, varieties. They may have a slightly different petal, something like that. The bees and the butterflies and other insects, they feed on the flower part, and the birds eat the seeds of these. In about another month, maybe sooner, because things are happening sooner than they used to. So in a few weeks, if you happen to take a ride up to North Florida, even up 19 or up 41, you're going to find blankets of these Black-Eye Susans up there.
there's one thing I want to, if you want to go back to the Black-Eyed Susan, I just want to, I'm looking at this more as a photographer or a photographic view and stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people, you know, hopefully some of these people that are in your class today is like that as well. And there are times that these Black-Eyed students will produce a double flower on the same stem. And it is a really treat to actually come across one of those. It's very rare, but it does happen. And hopefully someday, if you're out wandering, you'll keep an eye on that specific unique part of the Black-Eyed Susan where it can actually form two buds on the same stem. So it's really fascinating.
And what I love about nature photography, because I do a little bit too, and I'm anywhere near as good as Alice, but she tries to coach me. Even if you are no good at all, it's a like a centering practice almost. It really helps you stay in the moment. At that moment you're trying to capture, you know, that particular flower or insect or whatever. It's like, you know, it's very, I think, soothing and, you know, like a meditation practice almost. And it gets really exciting when, like you said, if you're on the outlook, you're looking out for that double flowered Black-Eyed Susan or a particular flower. And we have a couple of those in here that I know Alice went crazy when we that we found them. Do you happen to know who this Black-Eyed Susan's friend is that's hanging out with it here, this other yellow flower?
Oh, I'm afraid to.
No, that's fine. This is
I think I do, but I don't want to misinterpret that flower.
The Master Gardener Coordinator in Pasco County is a good friend of mine for a very long time, Jim Mall. And he would tell me when he was in college and they have to do identification, they would call a thing like this a DYC when they were in college. And I'll just change the first word to darn, is a darn yellow composite. That's all they knew. There's a whole lot in those aster type families. Here's one that can be incorporated into landscapes pretty easily. This Cherokee bean, or also coral bean. Red tubular, gonna bring those hummingbirds.
Mm-hmm.
These get tall and they're kind of interesting, like, you know, scraggly kind of in an interesting way. So in the landscape, they would work pretty well incorporating them with other things, or even planting as many of them as possible. That's one of the tricks I heard from Dr. Gail Hansen, who works at the University of Florida, and she knows a lot about design. And people complain about native plants that, you know, maybe they don't look as good, or they're sometimes scraggly or have small flowers or something. And she suggested, well, that's when you get a lot, you know, and you put them together, or you incorporate them nicely with that pop of red that's going to come there. You know, it makes a great addition. And these are easy. These are pretty easy to grow. Actually, you do have to be careful because the beans are deadly to ingest. So, you know, if you have some pets or something like that, then you want to be careful, as, you know, if they're, you know, if they like to taste things as well. Don't put them in any salads or anything like that. They are quite deadly. Now this one defies the notion that native plants are small, have small flowers. A lot of these don't. The only problem is this wonderful plant really is not going to adapt well to your landscape at all, if you can even find it. So this is one of those that we're going to enjoy out in the woods, and just the fact that they exist. This pine barren frost reed. I mean, look at how amazing they are. And those, you know, the large anthers with the, you know, the orange on them, and they do like sandy areas and full sun. a lot of these flowers, because of where we are, we were kind of hanging around west of 19 for most of these flowers that we're discussing. So they're either going to be in a like a sand pine type habitat or more swampy kind of area, because you kind of go in and out of. We were kind of up and down shoreline when we found some of these, and some of them we found in a wildlife management area on North 19. So if you know where that is, you already know where that is, but don't expect us to give up our locations. Mostly because we're just trying to protect them. We don't, we're not trying to say, ooh, we're the only ones who get these flowers. We're trying to protect the flowers.
So the interesting with all these spring flowers and everything is the coloration of each flower. I mean, as you go on through your presentation, you'll notice that how wild the coloration of the flowers are, the yellow, and then the yellow with the orange, especially on this flower itself. I mean, it's really, really unique how nature creates all this stuff.
It really is. Yeah, it is. Here's a pale meadowberry. I mean, look at the wild, anthers on this one. What is this word? The hypanthium? That's this thing that holds the flower. That's all that's talking about, and that's urn shaped. It can get to be about 2 feet tall. This one likes pretty much swamps, moist, acidic, or loam type soils. It is difficult to propagate. And while I'm thinking of it, let me say this. If you run across these flowers, it is illegal to obviously don't pick them, but also don't try and dig them up or even gather the seeds. You may think seed gathering is harmless, but it's not, because that seed needs to propagate the area where that wildflower is. So take only pictures, leave only footprints.
Exactly.
and enjoy it, and find out, like I said, the ones that you can find in a native plant nursery. I'll try to remember to let you know those are, pretty readily available, or might take some research, but you might find it. These ones are difficult to propagate. So, if no one has figured out how to propagate them or replicate the wild area in your yard, it's not going to be something that's available for sale. Now, if you happen to live like on the edge of a wetland or something, you may be blessed enough that some of these are going to find their way up into your yard. And then if so, then, enjoy them. Don't go there mowing this stuff down, really enjoy them. Now we're going to cover 2 milkweeds in this presentation, and neither of them are the ones that are pretty commercially available. There's 21 native milkweeds in Florida, only 3 of which of those native milkweeds are commercially available. Why is that? Because they're hard to propagate, and the ones that grow in the wild. This one you can find in that wildlife management area. You would look at the leaves and never know it's a milkweed, because it's got really big, I call them cabbage-like leaves. And they've even got like purple veins, like some of the cabbages. But all of the milkweeds are all the host plants for our monarch butterflies and nectaring plants for many others. So this is one you're not going to find commercially available. What you will find commercially available will be the Asclepias perennis, tuberosa, and you find plenty of the tuberosa out there in the wild. That's the bright orange kind, not plenty, but you can come across it out in the wild, the bright orange kind, and it's also available from native nurseries. That's what they call the butterfly milkweed sometimes. And the other one I'm thinking is incarnata. I'm not quite sure, but there are 3 that the people who do such things have been able to propagate in a way that makes them available for sale. This one is not one of them, but it is a fantastic, to be on the lookout for these big leaves, and it's gonna like fall on the ground. This kind of plant just kind of does that, falls and kind of trails.
There's this, for this, just wanted to cut in here for this sandhill milkweed and some of these milkweed, that there are specific caterpillars that, need these types of milkweed in order to feast on. There's one particular moth I was trying to look for it, that is its host plant.
The monarchs, yeah, and the queens, I think, yeah.
It's actually moth. It's not a butterfly, but it's
a moth. Okay, cool.
That actually is. I have to look for it. I'll put it in the chat, but specifically needs that plant, that sandhill milkweed, in order to survive.
Oh, neat. Here's a beauty, beauty, also known as the Prairie Iris or the Blue Flag Iris, Savannah Iris, Savannah Prairie, kind of same word there. Bees love these flowers. Birds love the seed. I'm not saying these won't be available through a native plant nursery, but you might have to, search quite a while to be able to find it. But you're going to have like a bog type area. Don't even bother if you don't have that in your yard to try and find that, because it's a wetland type plant. Beautiful native iris. I mean, it's just as amazing, the absolute beauty, like you said, that nature creates in a lot of these flowers. And this gets like, what, 1.5 feet or something, like a regular, like a walking iris or African iris or something.
Yeah, these irises go more into the wet, like on within the wetland areas and stuff. And this was actually, I think, in a swamp area.
So, like I said, if you live on the edge of a wetland, maybe you'll be blessed enough to have these already there for you. Now, this is interesting. It's an interesting thing because of something that happened to me when I was creating this. It was on Monday. First of all, let me say these flocks, there is a native variety, and this is it, the Downy Flocks. What you see covering the roadsides, which have already started, I mean, they did not used to start until April or May, but they're starting. We saw them on Sunday. We took a trip and we saw them. They call that, this is what, no, let me, flocks are what cover the roadsides, like up and down 19 and other areas. Like I know in Ocala, sometimes whole fields are covered with this, a Texas cousin of our native. That is what the Wildflower program, seeded out. That's what was more readily available. Not saying there's not some of this Downy Flocks mixed in with them, but for the most part, that's their native, or I'm sorry, that's their Texas cousins out there called Phlox dramundi. Nothing wrong with them. They're beautiful flowers. They're just not the native variety. So I was looking to make sure, I could find a native variety. That was before I got Alice's permission to use all of her wonderful flowers. But I went outside and looked where I have planted a native garden that from plants I got from another friend, Rita. And you see how, it has these lancet type leaves. I thought for sure what I planted there was a milkweed until Monday when I looked over and it's growing these pink flowers that look exactly like this. And I'm like, well, you are obviously not a milkweed. You are a Downy Flock. So, and the same day that I was making a program that mentioned these Downy Flocks, they attract skippers and bumblebees. So like I said, nothing wrong with the good old Texan cousins out there on the roadside, but just the native variety is a little bit harder to find, but I have a friend who has some, obviously, because she got me some. This is where Alice has really shown off the beauty of this that we could walk right by and think of as a weed and never pay attention to how gorgeous these flowers are, because they're pretty small flowers. One thing I love about this plant is its name. I mean, could you get more descriptive? Let's just describe it and call that a name. Many flower beard tongue. Almost sounds like some kind of Viking. Many flower beard tongue. It's like if we were called, you know, I don't know, you know, graying woman, you know, that's basically what we're calling this flower. But it's really cool, its shape. And it's just in long stalks with many flowers. Even the Latin name, multiflorous, it tells you many flowers on the stalk. And it has long hairy filament that protrude from the corolla, which is where they get the beard tongue. It's got a hairy tongue. It does well in gardens, if you can find it in the native plant nurseries. And what I would do is put a lot of this together, because, you know, one by itself is kind of you'll pass it by thinking it's a weed. I put a bunch of these together, or somewhere where you need some pops of white. Hummingbirds come to this. I don't have on here the long-tongued bees. Also love these kind of flowers. And it is the host plant for the Baltimore checker spot butterfly. Now, do we have that butterfly in our area, Alice? Do you know?
I am not sure. I have to research that.
Yeah. But these are ones you would mow over with your mower without paying attention to them. But we're trying to tell you, hey, pay attention to these. Let them do their thing. Here's a fun spiderwort. It's a native spiderwort. As I say at the bottom, it's not often found in native nurseries because they want to do their own thing. So it's hard to, you know, make them do what you want them to do. I have spiderwort coming up in my yard every spring. May not be this dayflower one because it doesn't have the like Mickey Mouse ears that this one does. But so you may be lucky that these might come up and volunteer. And if so, don't mow them down. Let them be beautiful for you. They're usually found in a coastal upland and pine woodland area, can get about 18 inches tall. That bottom petal, it's hard to tell here, but it's white. That's why they call it a white mouth. And then the blue petals kind of look like ears. It's a day flower, which means the other spiderwort that puts itself in my yard, definitely by lunchtime, they're closing up. And that's what, or, you know, some of them take till like maybe 2 in the afternoon. The gopher tortoises love the leaves of these. And of course, your bees and pollinators are going to be all over the flowers. So another great treasure out there. Here's another beard tongue. Eustis Lake beard tongue. So obviously named after where it was originally decided to be named, I guess, where they found it, and then they decided they're going to name it. It's one of, what does that say? There's that 3. I've got the chat covering that up. Yes, 3 native snapdragons in Florida. You're going to look at it and think weed. Again, though, get down, really study it, because these pollinators don't think weed. These pollinators think food, you know, life, what I need. And each plant can produce a dozen stalks, which can produce a dozen blooms. So it can be pretty prolific. And the hairs, she's really captured those hairs on there. They help the insects, you know, find their way to the petals, like, come on here this way. And bees and wasps and hummingbirds, you know, just love these. So what else do we have here? My favorite. This is my favorite. Alice introduced me to these. there's lots of marsh pinks out in the world, but this one is just really amazing because it has large flowers, like it's called.
Mhm.
And the stalks are like really slender, and then the flowers are pretty big on the end of them. They again, this is like a wetland plant. They like moist ground in the full sun. In fact, they prefer when we start getting some rains, you know, to really start popping up. And Alice introduced me to a field of them last year. I do have memorized where it is because this one is important to me, although she told me they're not really like mowing your access to it right now. But I have to keep in my mind and mark where, because it's under a bunch of pines mixed in with, you know, other types of flowers, and just fields and fields of this through the spring. So I'll have to take my daughter so she can mark where it is, because, you know, 40 years from now, I want her to remember that, because that's where I want some of my ashes spread. I just really love, you know, that spot.
You know, and a lot of these things, a lot of these wildflowers do, I mean, go through a dormant stage. There's sometimes that they'll skip a year and they'll bloom 1 year, and then they'll skip a year and then bloom another year. And also, you know, fire and even fire is not accessible, then mowing. I mean, all this has a huge effect on the health and the growth of these wildflowers. We're not talking about inside or your landscaping, but we're talking more about out in the wild, in your forest and stuff like that. So,
and some of these, yeah, they're not going. This wild thing here has not been tamed for landscapes,
right?
And a lot of these flowers, the one we're going to get at near the end, is really fire dependent. You're not going to see it if there's not a fire. So it's usually, you're going to find it in a managed wildlife management area or conservation area. You're not going to set your landscape on fire, and do not do that. That is illegal. So some of these plants you're not going to see, but this one is almost, again, there's that word endemic, meaning belonging, only found in Florida. But one little county in Alabama has adopted these as well. So it's almost endemic to Florida. And it's attractive to many pollinators. And because of the large petals and just the accessibility, some of the insects will sit there waiting around for the insects that they know want to go there to pollinate, so that they have the opportunity to get those insects. You know, that's all part of the circle of life. But this wild thing, we just have to enjoy out in the wild, because it's not going to be tamed to our landscape. I just love, I mean, it looks like somebody took a marker and put that yellow star in there. It's amazing. Do not fear. This is not the coronavirus. Do not be afraid of this one. This is an amazing little plant. And this is very much macroed. So I'll let Alice talk to you about this, because I know it's one of her favorites.
This is probably one of my favorites carnivorous plants. And I tell you, if anybody, they're so tiny that you'll step on them. If you're not looking for them, and if you're walking out in a moist, wet area, and we're talking about in the woods or on a nature trail or what have you, and yet that soil is a little bit wet, then you'll be able to see these like pink little blotches all over the ground. And if you have the opportunity to either get a little bit closer look or have a macro lens, it is just fascinating to see the adaptations of this plant. And forgive me, I don't know the terminology at this time, even though we did write an article about this, but these little dewdrops on the tips of these stems is attracting to the insect. So they'll digest it's kind of like not a folding, but they'll just get stuck there, the insects, and they will consume, this plant will consume all the enzymes that are in the bug. And it's the
Pretty cool.
circle of life right there.
Yes, yes.
It's amazing.
We have more carnivorous plants than you would think we do.
Yes.
It's just a lot of them are tiny, tiny little things.
Really, really tiny.
Mm-hmm. Now this one, pretty soon you're going to be able to walk out anywhere and start to see. And this is a weed that captures people's attention because they're so pretty. And I remember my sister would ask me every year for several years, what are those, purple stalks? They're also called blazing star, aside from shortleaf gay feather, and that there are different, kind of a little bit different varieties and things. They might look slightly different. People just go around calling them Liatris as well. It's, the first part of their scientific name. These grow along with the Florida green eyes in my natural part of the yard. I let them do their thing. You can get seed for these. We're going to give you some resources at the end that'll help you learn more about the ones you can't have in your yard or see what can be available in your yard. I've seen butterflies and bees all over them, but they do I live up in the Royal Highlands, so it's very dry and very it's a scrub area, pretty much scrub flatwoods, and that's kind of the areas in the dry flatwoods. You'll see these quite a bit. So now you know their name. You can call them blazing star. I think more people call them that, or Liatris, or shortleaf gay feather, whatever you want to call them. That's what they are. And they're gorgeous. And if you happen to be able to get seeds for them to plant them in mass, would be, amazing looking. Kind of look like lavender or something, which does not do well here. Here's another nice macro picture of something you're going to overlook and call a weed every day of the week. And run over with your lawnmower. But these are available by seed. Usually they find their own way into your yard. The native bees, you're going to find the native bees all over these, and you find them in the pine flatwoods and disturbed, areas, like you would a lot of weeds, but this is a native wildflower. Don't let the term fleabane put you off. It does not attract fleas. It's the bane of fleas, I think. I remember reading a book that took place in Roman times, and it just mentioned in the book that she would put, the character would put fleabane in a chest with her clothes, because apparently they believed that it repelled fleas. Now, whether or not it does, I don't know, but that's the name. That's where the name came from. So don't think it attracts fleas or anything. And with all different plants, you'll find these looking a little different. Some of them may be a little fringier, look like some, reminded me of, clothes people wore when I was growing up, like hippie kind of clothes and stuff. Or what do you have to say about these poor overlooked?
They're awful. It's so hard to tell you, but all these flowers, and especially this one, is very important for wildlife, and especially the smaller butterflies. Like you have the dainty butterfly, Phaon
crescent,
yeah, all those crescents and everything, and even the little tiny
buckeyes,
blue metallic bees. Those are super, super tiny, and this is what they need to gather nectar and gather pollen and everything. So it's a very essential asset to have, and if you're able to have it into your landscape. So
here's another beauty. Also grows in different varieties, so it might look, this patch might look different than that patch over there. This sneeze weed. First thing I'm going to say is it's not going to make you sneeze. Again, some of these names, I think, affect people's attitude about it. What happened is the Native Americans would grind it up and sniff it. to dispel it, if you do that, it's going to make you sneeze. Yes. To dispel evil spirits. That was kind of like what the medicine man or whatever would do. So it doesn't, you're not going to walk by it and it make you sneeze unless you ground it up and sniff it up your nose. It's not going to make you sneeze. And in fact, all of in this family, this Helenium family, they were named after Helen of Troy, where they say her tears fell to the ground and these flowers came up. One plant may produce 100 blooms. So, Helen cried a lot. But,
apparently.
Yes. Because she had to marry someone that she didn't want to, and the whole story. But anyway, they need to be in a wetland type area, and they get to be about 2 to 4 feet tall. What are your experiences with this sneezeweed when you've come across them?
I haven't seen them in a bundle like this, but there is a sneezeweed that I know that's a single stem, and it is. I just love the center of the flower and just the whole different type of design that it has. But again, it's a great, and if you're going into photography and want to learn more about photography, this is probably a perfect subject to sit and hang out, to wait for all those pollinators to come, your bees and your butterflies and everything. So I love all plants, so except the ones that stick on you. So
no, Biden's alba, those are wonderful pollinator attractors too. I have a love-hate relationship with my Spanish needle or the Biden's alba, because it grows, all over, and I try to keep it under control, but I cannot get rid of it because every time I go out there are pollinators all over it. This one, I remember very specifically when Alice pointed this one out to me, because you would not see this as a milkweed. It's just a long, skinny, grassy looking weed, but it's a whorled, the flowers kind of grow in a whorl, milkweed. Again, not one of the commercially available ones. They say maybe seeds might be available, but in general, the experience I've had, it's not one of the 3 commercially available ones. It is smaller and skinnier, than most of milkweeds. It does like to be out in moist soil, but it packs a punch in all that skinny smallness, because all milkweeds are toxic. That's why the monarch caterpillars, that offers them some protection if they ingest this plant that is toxic to birds or things like that. This one has the most toxin of all the milkweeds. So it's probably something you really don't want in your yard if you have pets or something. Anyway, do you know what kind of butterfly you got here on it?
Oh, yes, indeed. The zebra swallowtail. It's gorgeous.
Yes, that's a gorgeous picture too. It's amazing.
Thank you. But I just want to correct an error that I did on here. These particular world milkweeds are more or less in a sandy habitat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my mistake. I'm sorry.
So, that's all right.
I apologize for that.
No, we did see it in a sandy area, but not something you're going to adapt well to your yard. Now, if you think there are no native roses around, you would be wrong. There is this native swamp rose as one of the native roses around. And it really does like to have its feet in the swamp, pretty much in a really wet area. It's a native rose, it's not a hybrid. So what is it going to have a lot of?
Sun.
It's have a lot of thorns. The thorns have not been bred out of it. And that's its protection. It's, and it grows in like briars, like the, what was, surrounded the castle for Sleeping Beauty that the prince had to cut all through, It's going to be a lot like that. And maybe you can find it in a native plant nursery, but you've got to make sure you have the right conditions, a very wet area, and that's an area no one is going to spend a lot of time around because of the thorns. And that conservation area where we were, we could see it on the side of the road because it likes some sun, likes to be in the water, but also get some sun. So you're not going to find it in a deep wooded kind of swamp area.
Yeah, and very important is the bumblebees.
Yes.
Huge fan of the bumblebees. Love these plants.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I've seen the bumblebees on these, but they won't be still very long.
Yeah, they won't.
Now this one, I promise you, you could walk outside your door and see. Everyone considers this a weed. They're going to mow it down, but it is the lighter leaf sage. And it's going to have more like purple type flowers all up and down the stalk. And the leaves themselves are the shape of the musical instrument, a lyre, with purple that comes out of the mid vein there. You're going to say, all right, you're just talking about weeds now, but this is fabulous. And it responds well to mowing, as you may well know if you're trying to get rid of it. But we're trying to convince you it's doing a wonderful job out there for the environment, because bees, our native bees, need flowers or they're not going to survive. And then we can't rely 100% on the European honeybees. We need our hundreds of species of native bees to keep us alive too. You know, it all works together. And butterflies, once in a while hummingbird, but they usually, if they're going to find something, you know, where they're going to get more out of it. If you feel it, it's a square stem. That tells you right there it's in the mint family. And like I said, you can step outside and find this anywhere. So we're just trying to, for the bees, let it be.
Yeah, definitely.
Here's a fun one too. Not really widely available commercially. So it's one of those things you're going to have to enjoy in nature, in the sandy flatwoods, scrub, sandhills, pine barren areas. It's really only about what, the size of maybe a 50-cent piece or so. The rush flowers. Almost endemic to Florida, found in a few counties in Florida. I wonder who wrote that. That is supposed to say found in a few counties in Georgia. So what happens when you try to finish this up at 10 o'clock at night? Looks, when I say only looks good when in bloom, you know, everything looks beautiful, but it's very not noticeable if it's not in bloom. We'll just put it that way. You can just walk right by it. It'd just be like green thin sticks and you're not going to know it until suddenly whew, this beautiful flower comes off of it. If you do come across it or it volunteers for you, the only way I would ever say to try and transplant anything is if it's on your own property, because otherwise it is illegal. As I will repeat, do not take any seeds or any of the plants or anything to try and propagate these if you find them in the wild.
Yeah.
That is not good for the environment, and you could and should be find a lot of money for that.
Yeah. This particular, for the rose rudge, if anybody's an insect fan here, the blister beetles love this flower. So they will chomp on those leaves. So
the blister beetles.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Here's, I said, one of my favorites. Love, 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 love these little flowers. I just don't love their name, because unlike the Florida green eyes or the mini flowered beard tongue, the name makes no sense. It's not a grass, it's an iris, and it doesn't have blue eyes. That just bothers me. It has yellow eyes, blue petaled, yellow-eyed irises. That's what we should call this. It's more or less a ground cover. You can find this in some native nurseries. You might have to work at it, you know, but you should be able to find it. Just cute little blue, you know, one of the blue flowers of spring. There's a whole category and you can find classes on the blue flowers of spring. This is one of them. And I saw when I was trying to do some research, somebody had a picture that they took and put on the internet of where there was like a whole carpet of these, and they said on the Suncoast Parkway in Brooksville. What year, I don't know, but I'm taking a ride pretty soon.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
to see if I can find where they are, or if they're along the trail. Yeah, I'll let you know, and we'll run out there with our cameras. And
yeah, definitely. They're starting to sprout out right now. So I mean, you'll be able to see them.
Yep,
They're tiny. They're tiny. They're not. If you walk too fast, you're gonna miss them. But you know, all of these things you have to really just pay attention and know what if you're looking for a particular spring wildflowers, and you know, hopefully, you know, Lily's presentation gives you an idea of what to look for. So, and
the books say they're 6 to 12 inches tall. I've never seen them that tall. Yeah. Maybe more like 3. You know, and Frank Galdo, has my job in Pasco County, Florida Friendly Landscaping Program Coordinator. He has on his Facebook page where he goes to different wild areas there in Pasco, and he's got wonderful pictures of these that are blooming right now. This was our treasure. This was our treasure that, yes, Alice was really jumping for joy when we found this grass pink orchid. It's a carnivorous orchid, native to Florida. Will not grow in your yard first. It's endangered, for one thing.
Yes.
Because it's completely fire dependent, you know, it's not going to grow in your yard for many, 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 many years. It was the goal of forestry and everybody else to suppress fire. And so only in the past maybe 50 years have they realized, oh, we need to, at least in these conservation areas, you know, fire is a good thing as long as it's a controlled fire. It's what needs to happen in nature. And several species, including this grass pink orchid, will only grow out of fire. So, and yeah, it's a carnivorous orchid, if you ever heard of such a thing.
When I had first saw this, my first time that I've ever saw this, and if anybody is looking at this picture, you'll see that it's kind of like upside down. You think it's upside down. It's like, wait a minute, because the lip is supposed to be on the opposite side, but it's not. That's how it is. And what happens is that the insect would come into, I can't know if you can point to this part, the bottom part here, and it automatically shut. This top lip will fold down. I mean, incredible how these carnivorous plants work. You would think they have their own brain system, and it's just, I still get blown away. Yeah, but it's a very important plant, and special species of an orchid that is very rare. It's not found in a lot of places, and we as nature enthusiasts
need to protect them. Which is why we won't tell you where we found these.
Yes.
Because if we told you, we'd have to kill you. Here's our last one. The name alone is going to scare people, and you know that. The oblong leaf snake herb, which is why people go around instead calling it a twin flower.
Right.
Yes. And again, something that you would walk right by and consider a weed. But look up, I mean, why does, just one petal have those those purple leopard spots? It is just an incredible work of nature. And those long-tongued bees are going to be there, the butterflies and the birds, and you can find this at some of your native nurseries as well. And this might be something you're not going to look at. It's not a piece of grass, so you're going to mow it down or try and get rid of it. No, let these things be around. No turf grass. It might attract some beetles, things like that.
Mhm.
But your real amount of pollinators are going to be found in these weeds and wildflowers. That is, oh, no, I'm sorry. One more. This is the last one.
Mm.
Speaking of, you were talking about the intricate flowers. This, every time I look at it, it's just like, how did this happen? And this is widely available in nurseries. You can find this pretty easily. And I have a picture here because people ask me all the time, will it produce fruit? So Alice has a picture to prove. Yeah, it can produce fruit out of that funky flower there. It's aggressive. So it being native,
Yeah.
we refer to it as pioneering. But you got to have a lot of space for it. It freezes back here every year, so it's never, it's native, and some native plants may become aggressive opportunistically because of something we have, you know, as humans, messed up the ecosystem. So another species comes in and kind of takes over, and that may even be a native species, but yet might be causing issues like cattails or some even of the native water lilies, or this might take over a pasture or something, but they don't upset the balance of nature. They're just opportunistic, you know, things we have done. Then they tried it.
And especially for the passion vine, if anybody knows, the picture on the left is a May pod. So after the flower dies, it produces that May pod, which is a fruit and seeds. But I totally lost it's a very important species for the Gulf Fritillary, because that's the only plant that this particular butterfly will lay its eggs on. So,
and I can never,
nature balances nature. So
right, and I can never remember. I showed Rita Grant's class that she just gave, and she knows which one stays in the sunny part of the plant, and then the other one, probably the zebra longwing, stays in the shady part of the plant. I'm just guessing because I've recently learned that zebra longwings sleep in Spanish moss.
Oh, really?
Yes, they roost.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I know. I'm going to throw call out to Spanish moss there too. So it serves a great ecological function. That's one of them. Anyway, it serves lots of ecological functions.
Yes, it does.
So that's why we love what we do. We get to learn all the time. Here are some resources that can help you either learn more about these wildflowers that you can't grow in your yard, or figure out which ones you can and how to incorporate them into your yard. The first website is the Florida Association of Native Nurseries. And yes, it is like that. I didn't turn those letters around. It is AFNN, maybe because something else was FANN or .org or something. Or you can just put in Google Florida Association of Native Nurseries. What that does is tells you where there's a nursery near you. And then you can contact that nursery and say, hey, do you have, this type of plant? Mostly what we have in this area are small native nurseries, small hobby-like nurseries. Mm-hmm. You can give them a call because they may have what you're looking for, or they might be able to guide you, in what you're looking for. There's a large nursery in Groveland called Green Isle Nursery that I know gets a lot of attention. It's on our bucket list photo bucket list of places we want to visit. I know there's another one in I can't remember the name of it, but more in Central Florida. Look them all up, and but you may make a day trip out of it, but stay in Central Florida, because a native nursery in South Florida, if you live in Hernando County, is not going to have plants for you. We're a very diverse state. Another great resource is the Florida Wildflower Foundation. They're not 100% committed to 100% natives, but all of the flowers are Florida friendly and they have a lot of natives, and you can get a hold of great seed packs.
Yes.
At great prices.
Yes.
And lots of educational information as well. And also then the Florida Native Plant Society. There is a Hernando chapter, but look up their organization because you will find lots of, it'll be a great rabbit hole where you can spend all evening reading everything about native plants and, and then some. So let me see what we have. I don't think we have a lot in the chat today. Does Cherokee bean flower well in the shade? Do you know the answer to that, Alice?
Well, I've seen the Cherokee at Big Pine.
Oh, you did answer. Okay.
Yeah, and they do. I've seen them in the shade, and I've also seen them in full sun. So I may not be correct on that answer, so don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But they do provide. They need some type of a sandy soil because of the habitat that I saw them in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more sandy part.
Right, a dry, well-drained soil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and someone's letting us know that in Orlando, the Tar Flower chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society is having a huge sale this weekend. And Orlando, Bob is asking where in Orlando. We need details here. Orlando, you're pretty safe because they are at Lou Gardens. Okay, Saturday and Sunday starts at 9. Orlando's pretty close to us as far as plant wise. So if you live in Central Florida, going to Orlando, making a nice day trip out of it, you'll be fairly safe in the kind of plants that you get. Like I said, just don't go to Miami or even up maybe to Tallahassee. They might have some plants that, are appropriate for their 8A or 8B range, but not for our 9A or even 9B range. Okay. There's a lot of people going, so parking is a nightmare if you're going to Lou Gardens, and masks and social distancing will be in force.
Kathy H has a question.
Yeah.
I think she might be talking about the rain lily.
Yes, she is. And, I almost had that on this presentation.
I am surprised you didn't.
Yeah. Yes, the rain lily or the zephyr lily. They're starting to pop up now.
Oh, yeah.
It does look like a 6-inch lily of the valley, but it is at Masco lily, at ATMASCO.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
But lily for short. So.
Or you can call it rain lily. It does. They pop up after rains. Or zephyr lily because it's a zephyr at Damasco, something like, and they pop up anywhere. I've seen them in dry or wet soil. And I think if you check around native nurseries, they may be available, but I don't know. If someone's been successful growing them in your yard, let me know. But I've only ever really seen them pretty wild. If you're going to Orlando, bring your garden cart because you're going to carry a lot back. All right. Yes. Thank you very much, Alice. You helped me have an incredibly visually pleasing presentation today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciated it.
And can we mention your new position? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Absolutely.
Tell us. What are you doing now, Alice?
Oh, well, I am now working part-time as a educational specialist at Chinsaga Conservation Center. And I'm really excited to begin my new adventure with FWC, and hopefully I can continue learning. And
they made a great pick because she's one of those really, really curious people who can't see something without wanting to learn more about it and also then share that knowledge. So she's an education specialist. That's what you are at Chinsaga Conservation Center, not the Manor House. Don't
right.
don't go to the manor house and look for her. You can go to the manor house. It's very nice, but she'll be kind of around the corner, down the road and around the corner at the conservation center on Lake Lindsay Road. And they're going to be working on at least having outdoor social distance programs and, you know, opening up some more as time goes by. Here's our upcoming classes we have on the schedule. Next week, Dr. Lester is going to be talking about incorporating edibles into your Florida-friendly landscape. So that'll be really cool. And we had such response to our bugs that bite, sting, and taste you that we made a part 2, but that's going to be on a Tuesday on the 16th. And we're going to be talking about icky bugs. We're going to talk about lice and bed bugs and other various, mites. If you have an interest in that, we're going to bring that up too. Then the 24th, today we kind of talked about those wildflowers that are out there in the wild, but the 24th, I'll get back to how to bring these pollinators to your yard, various kind of ways. The last week in March, Dr. Lester and I are going to cover 5 common gardening mistakes. You wonder how we can get 5 in an hour? Yeah, because we have a lot to talk about, about those. Just things people, they just don't realize are, you know, not the right thing to do. And then they get really frustrated as to why things aren't working out for them in the yard. And we're still working on an April series. I can tell you the dates. It'll be these Tuesdays in April, the 13th, 20th, and the 27th. And again on May 4th, those are all Tuesdays. It's a class on rotted, recycled, and resurrected life cycles in the landscape. And this kind of goes back to where we spent time in the wild today. We think in our yard there can be nothing, you know, kind of dead looking or unattractive. And it's all part of the cycle of nature. And, you know, nothing really disappears in nature. It's all death brings life, you know, and that's kind of like all the cycle there. So I do know on the 13th, we're going to have Master Gardener Bernie Bathauer teach us. It's called Digging into Soil Science. We're going to start from the ground up. The 20th is either going to be beetles and other kind of insects who help us take out the trash by Dr. Lester, or there's a fungus among us by either Dr. Lester or a specialist, if he would ever call him. And those two will either be the 20th or the 27th. We'll let you know when we get those right. And then I'm going to wrap it all up on May 4th with bringing it all back home and how we can embrace the cycle of, you know, recycled and resurrected in our own landscape. Well, I think we've gone a little bit over time today. Thank you so much for joining us, Alice, and thank you so much for your incredibly gorgeous photographs. And I think this turned out very well, and we might be seeing you again here. So
I'm here for you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week, and we will see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye, Carol.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.